All right, this is an exciting episode, folks, because I don't have just one guest. I have two. This is the first time I've done this ever. And what's really cool, I've known Gary Sugal for a while. Okay, we've been in Facebook chatting and talking on the phone and all this kind of stuff. We've known each other for a little while. But Stefano Bedetti, he's new. He's awesome. He's an amazing player. So I've got both of these guys in the house today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. It's my pleasure again to see you and chat with you, and of course to see my dear friend Stefano.
Likewise.
Now, y'all may be wondering, Donna, wait, what's the deal? Why are these guys together with you? This doesn't make sense. You will see. You will definitely see. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with Gary Sugal. And Gary Sugal is a legendary mouthpiece maker. And he also makes saxophones too, by the way. We're going to get to that probably in a future episode, okay? Just to let you know, just to whet your appetite. But we're going to start off with Gary, get into his background a little bit with regard to, him playing saxophones, him making saxophone mouthpieces. And then you're going to see the connection that happened with Stefano. All right, so Gary, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I moved up from New York to Rhode Island. I was doing business in Rhode Island with a lot of manufacturers of fashion jewelry. And then I decided, because I lived in the Bronx, there was really no place to study jazz. And so I took some private lessons in Rhode Island from a wonderful player by the name of Joe Esposito. And he gave me an introduction to Berklee College of Music. And I decided we had a factory going at the time, and we were producing parts for local manufacturers. And I had two guys working with me, and they ran it while I went to Berklee. So at that time, I was fascinated. I got totally back into playing saxophone again, and I wanted to study and so on. And I met Jerry Baganzi while I was taking music lessons. At the same time, around March, I attended a show, a jewelry show, to figure out how to make molds for designing jewelry. And in the discussion came up, what's your hobby? And my hobby was saxophone. And they said to me, show us what you do. And they came to the shop, and I showed them the mouthpiece, and they said, we can show you how to make those mouthpieces on a CNC machine. And I became totally intrigued, because I was interested in CNC, but CNC for molding and modeling parts to design jewelry, not mouthpieces. And so at that time, mouthpieces were starting to come into vogue. Gardella, for example, he built a what we call a retrofit, an upright milling machine, and he converted it into a CNC machine, supposedly. I met these guys who were selling CNC machines, and they said, we'll show you how to do it. But they said, don't bother us from March until August. They came back to my factory in August, and they showed me the mouthpiece that I was playing. While I was studying with Jerry one afternoon, I said, Jerry, take a look at this mouthpiece. And Jerry said, this is amazing. And he looked at it. He says, who makes this? And I said, nothing. He played it. He fell in love with it. And he turned around and he says, tell me who makes this mouthpiece for you. Well, I said, I made this piece, and I take out the invoice, and I show him a deposit of $125,000. The system cost me $250,000. I told these guys, they're from Korea, I said, you have an open checkbook. Let's develop a whole line of mouthpiece. I just don't want to make tenor. I want to make alto, soprano, and baritone. So at that time, it was Dave Gardella and Gary Sugal making CNC mouthpieces. And the whole world came down on me when I went to the NAMM show and to the Music Mess in Germany that year. I think it was 88 or 89. Yeah, so basically, Jerry came down to the factory about 8, 10, maybe 12 times. And we took the best attributes of what he was playing at that time. And those attributes have to do with the measurements or the facings of the mouthpiece. And we found that one thing remained consistent with some of the best playing pieces. And we converted metric, because we measured them in metric, and then we converted to G-code to install into the CNC machine. The folks from Korea were able to helped me design the tenor, and we made several tenor models. We did alto model, and then we did baritone, and then along came Dave Liebman at that time, and we designed a Liebman model called the Super Lieb and the Dave Liebman model for soprano. And then, as I said, I exhibited at several shows, and people started to recognize that I was making these high-end CNC mouthpieces. And the reason I call them high-end, because they're produced on a very complex CNC machining center, and also they're hand finished by me. And then I use real gold on the mouthpieces. I don't use a flash gold like Costume Jewelry. At that time, Gardella was using flash gold to gold plate them. You could take a pencil eraser and erase the gold from it. Ours would last for decades, literally decades. And I've had a few pieces in here that were 20, 25, and 30 years old, and they still retained their original plating on them. Show a little worn underneath it, but that's normal. And CNC became really the mouthpiece of choice. And then, of course, in the last few years, you had a lot of manufacturers come into the business, because anybody who has can do this in their kitchen if they wanted to. They can do resin, they can do even lost wax casting. That's the way jewelry is made, which is not the same as CNC machining. And so many people came into it, I came up with another method to produce mouthpieces that were less expensive. And that was called the TAM series. And those TAM were about half the price of the CNC machine, CNC machining mouthpieces. Long story short, there were a couple of really wonderful endorsers. Adrian Spencer did a couple of videos on it. And it was a replica of the CNC KW and the Superguns. And so those mouthpieces in metal and became popular, basically. And the only big difference is my CNC pieces are made of pure copper, and then they're heavy gold electroplated, 18 karat heavy gold electroplated. And they are 100% pure copper. The TAMs are about 92% copper, and then they have other metals in it. So, but it's also 18 karat heavy gold plated. So coming to how I met, and we're talking 3.5 decades here of what went on. So I'm trying to make this as short as possible. I saw a wonderful saxophone player by the name of Stefano Bedetti playing on YouTube. And I said to him, that song, My Secret Love, and a number of other songs is my favorite, my wife's favorite. And I said, can you play that and make a recording? And he did. And he turned out that he made several recordings of requests that I made. And I said, he's the most amazing player I have ever seen. And we became friends. And I found him to be kind, gentle, and he had just the greatest sound, the greatest technique, the greatest ideas. And, you just fall in love with an artist who is just kind. And I decided to say, hey, let me send you a couple of my pieces. And I did. But at that time, we had the pandemic going on. I was up in Maine, and I live in Massachusetts, and I stayed at my daughter's house. And what I did is I took every model that I made, that means CNC models, the altos, the tenors, the baritones, and the sopranos, and I took my saxophone, my computer, my software, it's called SolidWorks, and my printer. And I had one printer at that time. And I brought that to Maine. And I stayed there from March until July during the pandemic, and reconstructed every mouthpiece, duplicated every mouthpiece that I could think of, every size. And that's a nice part about 3D printing. You can make every possible size if you know your measurements. And I had charts of all different measurements. So I made size 5 through 10 of Superguns of model 1 and 2, KW model 1 and 2, 10 sizes. I made them with bite plate and without bite plate. I also made them with the MBs, and then I made some models called Stefano Bedetti. I made a Yeti. Yeti was a fun thing to do. I was making like a joke, like, you know, I was in the woods and I met this Yeti, but that played as well. And so the mouthpieces played unbelievable. And so I sent those to Stefano and he made recordings for me. And I was just blown away. I mean, you know, this was beautiful. This was, you know, such a wonderful thing to happen. And I continued to do this. And as, you know, as things let up, I came back to the factory and I printed out a lot of 3D printed mouthpieces. And, you know, there became this market, this big market that was available to people who needed to own a mouthpiece but not spend, you know, $500 or $1,000. And so that's where my 3D mouthpieces came in. However, I also worked with one company that provided me with filament to go into the 3D that was basically metallic filament. It was plastic with powder, granulated powder, sort of like sugar, sort of like salt, that was converted to a filament, and I was able to make the Metallica line of mouthpieces. And Stefano has a few of those pieces. He has done a beautiful video of it. And so now we have not only 3D regular mouthpieces, but 3D Metallica mouthpieces, along with TAM and along with CNC mouthpieces. I can't stop. It's in my DNA to keep making mouthpieces. I'm not selling every mouthpiece that I make every day with biplates, no biplate, size 6, size 10, size 12, but they are there. And this is what I want the industry to know, that I'm very serious about what I put out there. I'm very serious about the quality. And yes, sometimes I'm human and I do make mistakes, but I back them up. And if anybody's not happy or not satisfied, of course I replace it, and I'd be happy to refund it if I can't replace it. That's, you know, that's in a nutshell. There's a lot more, and I want to give Stefano an opportunity to address some of your questions. And go ahead.
Actually, so Gary, this is great. This stuff that you told me now that I didn't even know also, and I'm going to have some questions for you in a minute. I love the way, and we talked a little bit beforehand, but you know, I love the way how you found Stefano. And so that was really cool. And Stefano, you know, for you, actually, I'd love for you to tell us about your background. I know a little bit, but I think people are going to be shocked when they hear some of the stuff because of the way you play is just ridiculous. But give us a little bit about your background. When did you start playing saxophones? When did you start playing music? And, you know, just where did you go to school? All these types of things. And then up to like when you met Gary and you got this request to, you know, play that song for him.
Well, I think that me and Gary, we are about to celebrate our first anniversary as friends, I guess, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, he came to me and he asked me if he could have sent me some mouthpiece. That time was the Yeti for sure, and Michael Brecker 2, maybe, the blue one, 3D printed, and another couple of 3D printed mouthpieces. So when I got the Yeti, I really, you know, I was shocked because I didn't know before. I'm a rubber guy or metal guy, mostly metal guy. I always been playing metal mouthpieces. You know, it's about frequencies, it's about, then I will tell you what you wanted to know about how I choose my stuff, my equipment, and so on. So really the Yeti was unbelievable. So I did a couple of videos, maybe 3, and then we start our cooperation together, you know. So along the way, he sent me so many mouthpieces that, you know, I let my students or friends or colleagues all over the Italy being playing them. They love them, you know. They're great. not expensive, and great result, great, performances. Uh, so I started to play music when I was 14. So now I'm 47. So it's quite a bit. I didn't want to play saxophone. I wanted to play accordion. Yeah, because my dad was playing a little accordion, and in my area, folk music is made basically with accordions. So I wanted to play accordion, but there was a very, close friend of mine who is my age, who was already playing accordion. So my mom told me, hey, why you don't play saxophone so you can make a duo? So that's how it began. It began like this. I told mom, okay, bring me a saxophone and I will try. So as soon as I put that saxophone, it was an alto. I put it in my mouth. I realized that I was able to play, to blow into it. And after a week, I knew almost all the folk repertoire here of my area, and I started to playing that way. By the way, the folk music we play here is 3/4 tempo, basically fast, slow, middle tempo, and even what is called polka. Here is 2/4, but very quick. And you've got to develop a very quick tongue, and even technique, because you have a lot of things to do. So, for me, that come easy. I didn't went to school much. I stopped very, very early because, I never liked people telling me what I have to do. Actually, I know that, I don't know how do you say this in English, but I was born in 73, and I am Indico. I'm an Indico guy, so I don't recognize authority, not very much. I decide my own who is my teacher, who I have to, to rely to. So, and so I'm a self-taught musician. I never studied with anyone. I just developed everything I know by ear training, playing over, my very first hero, Michael Brecker, that I discovered more or less when I was 16, more or less. I even thought Michael Brecker was a black guy because we didn't know we didn't have YouTube, of course, back then. I was just listening to his record with tapes. We had tapes. And, I was listening the whole day to Michael Brecker. He shocked me completely. So I started to go along with him over his record, And actually, that's it. Then I've been lazy for a lot of years, just playing, when it was time to go for a gig. My case in my studio was always closed during the week. Yeah, I had other interests. So I really started to study and to play saxophone 15 years ago, seriously. And when I say seriously, it means trying to go deep in what I was doing, trying to learn some harmony, because I didn't know anything about harmony. Till 32, I was just playing by ear, everything. And I was lucky because anyway, I was playing quite right, let's say quite right, even though I was going by here. So, and since then, the last 15 years, I started to practice 10, 12, 14 hours per day, even more. Yeah, really. And I started to look in internet for everything about harmony, Then internet come, of course, so I was able to download method, but I don't do very well with reading books. is not my way. I have to visualize what I do. For me, harmony is sound. Sound for me is different than rules, because when I play, I deal with sound, not with rules. In fact, sometimes somebody is not, always happy about what I play, because they say, I don't hear what you do very well. I mean, so, but I hear it, so I do it. I'm free, totally free in this. So, that's all actually.
I'm wondering if, wow, there's so much here to unpack. Okay, the folk music that you were talking about, and also playing polkas. One of my first mentors also grew up playing polkas. And I remember him saying to me that if you want to develop technique on the saxophone, play a lot of polkas because it's not easy. It is not easy. And so you're all over the place. It outlines harmony. So I'm thinking though that you playing all the folk music, you heard all the harmony. You may just not were able to label it, until you wanted to, later at, starting like around age 32. But I'm really curious though, you picked, it's so funny. Your mom said, oh, play a saxophone. Okay. And so you play saxophone, you're doing really well within a week. Did you have any musical background, piano? And does anybody in the house sing or play any instruments?
My dad was nice, how do you call, harmonica?
Okay.
It's called harmonica.
Yeah.
But he was doing a total different job. When he was, my dad died in 2014. He was born in 1938. And at the age of 7, in the middle of the war,
Yeah.
he found in front of a church harmonica that were probably thrown away by some soldier.
Wow.
Yeah, and people, they stepped over it, So he found it anyway, and that harmonica was playing a bit. So he started to hide somewhere playing because he was very shy. And, he turned out a very great harmonica player, folk music, of course. It was completely, he didn't know at all he was playing completely by ear. So, of course, he influenced me a lot, because I remember being a child and listening to my dad playing. And so that for sure, developed some curiosity and some passion, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So this really is fascinating too. And I wish I had this kind of upbringing in a sense where I would have learned everything by ear first and then learned how to read, because I think that you do have tremendous advantages doing that, and there is research that supports that. Do you find that, like now when you're do you read any music, or you're still mostly by ear?
Well, it depends. It depends. But for me, hear and feeling is everything. If I feel and I hear something, I don't care if it's correct, wrong, nice, bad. I really don't give a damn. I go there because I always need to, to look for something. When I play, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Never. I totally leave myself to what I am, to the music. And sometimes, this sometimes is a positive because you are so fresh, very fresh. Sometimes it's not that, fine, because you can step over some bad note. Not wrong. For me, notes are no wrong. There's no wrong notes for me. There are nice notes, beautiful notes, a little bit less beautiful notes. It depends on the place, on the moment. For me, I
Yeah,
play like this.
you know what I was thinking too, and we're going to get to Gary, and the way you guys work together in a second. But I was just thinking to myself, I love the way you explain that too. there's no really wrong notes. Miles Davis said the same thing, right? But really, when you think about it, right now we're having a conversation. Okay, I had some ideas for us to talk about, but we are improvising, and I'm not saying everything perfectly. There's a couple of ums in there, whatever. And it's not that it's horrible, though some people be like, hey, stop at the ums, whatever. But the thing is that it's still part of the conversation. You know what I mean? And so what you just said gave me that analogy of, when you're improvising, you have to learn your technique, right? You played a lot of polkas, a lot of folk music, and then you started really, really, study and bear down and whatever. But the thing is that, you have this technique, you could put it across and improvise with what you're hearing in your head and what you're feeling, and there's going to be some wrong notes, and it's okay because it's part of you.
Yes.
I think that's
That's
awesome.
why I'm always relaxed when I play. I don't feel any challenge. I don't feel any, I'm never scared because it is what it is. That's what I am. So,
Can I butt in here for a second?
Yeah.
I just want to say, one of the things is Stefano always would say he's able to express himself when he's playing, and he needs to express himself. And he said he was able to do that with me, with my pieces. And I found him over the years, the last year or so, he really hit home with that, because if you watch some of his videos, you could see his highs and his lows during that year, and you listen closely, and he's able to get that across. He's able to express how he feels, even on a slow ballad, on something fast, and that's what's amazing about him, because you get inside of Stefano, you get to feel him, you get to see where his heart is at the moment, and that's very, very unusual for a lot of players who just want to play fast notes. They want to play, as fast as they can go, and it's mechanical, it's computer generated. Stefano's not computer generated. Stefano is the real deal. His harmonies are real, they're original, and they come from the heart. And it goes back to this past year of both the pain that he suffered, and many people as well have suffered, but we have personal things that we've talked about. And I can tell you that I feel it. I feel him when he's playing. I could feel his heart, his emotions, and what he wants to say. And there are magnificent highs, and yes, there are lows, but that's what an artist is. An artist does go through life, and artists do suffer, and artists do survive, and they become better people. They become better human beings. And Stefano is one of those kind of people. He is an amazing person. And I'm not saying this because we're on video. He has inspired me to continue in this business. I should be retiring at this time, but because of Stefano, I just want to keep going. It's like in my DNA. And when I die, that's when it's going to stop. And people say, why are you making so many new things? Why are you creating all this new stuff? And because Stefano inspires, and he inspires musicians around the world, and people need to know him. They need to get to see him. They need to bring him to this country to he's the Pavarotti. He's the he's an amazing guy, and I love him for it. And he's changed my life, because I've had my downs too. This business is sometimes brutal, but most of the times it's been good, and he makes me feel good about what I do. He's kind and he's gentle, and that makes him a better artist, a better musician, a better human being. And that's what we need in this world. We need people who are kind to people, who are gentle, who are empathy, and who can inspire. And that's what he does. And I try to say that in my comments every once in a while on Facebook. But God, I mean, don't you stop, Stefano. Keep those little videos coming, because that's your legacy. And that was inspire people. That has inspired even Donna to create this little interview. But more people need to see him. More people need to fall in love with him as an artist and as a human being, and to learn from him. He is self-taught, and one of the things I remember from him. He said when he was learning to play saxophone, he always dreamt of getting one of my CNC pieces. And I said, this man has to have it. He's done so much for me. I don't care if it costs me $1,000, $10,000. I want him to have the best that I can give him, because he's given me so much in the time that I got to know him.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And you know what, Gary, too, what you just said too, Stefano's so kind and gentle. And with all the people that I've interviewed, the best performers are kind and they're compassionate. And, a lot of people think that, and it's because of television, media, and that kind of thing, that, these people that are playing these big stages and all that kind of stuff, that they're divas, that they're nasty, they have attitudes. And no, every single person that I've interviewed, I have not seen that, and it's so inspiring to me. Every time I haven't said this on the air yet, but I'm going to say it. Every time that I do an interview and I'm done, I'm like, I've got chills, because I'm like, oh my God, that was so amazing. That was so amazing. I love doing this. And it's for that reason. And I know I'm going to feel it today too, for sure. But let me get back on track here for a second, because this is a great lead in, because you were talking about, wanting to send him a mouthpiece. So Stefano, let's talk about, what you look for first we'll talk about like mouthpieces and stuff like that. And Gary, you're going to pipe in after him in terms of like the mouthpiece that, he eventually chose, and what makes that mouthpiece special, so that people can understand it better. And of course, there's so many playing examples on Facebook, and probably on YouTube as well, for people to hear, these mouthpieces.
Yes. If you don't mind, I would like to kind of conclude what you were saying just a minute ago. I think that about being kind and stuff like that, I think that we all are here to serve the music. For me, music is about make people dream, feeling better, having hope. Music is meant for that, for me, not just having fun, but is about emotion. For me is all about that. So I think that through whatever you do when you can play polka, you can play jazz, you can play blues, rock, pop. No, it doesn't matter. But really, when you play, you are as you are. I mean, there was an old friend of mine, a great drummer who died in 2000. He used to say, man, in life, you can fake as much as you want, and maybe you will get people to believe on your faking. You will get people to believe that you are something that you show, but that you are not. But when you play, you are in your panties. So you can't fake when you play. For me, it's like this. That's why I keep on, I don't train myself by rules, not even now. Sometimes I'm curious to know why things happen, so I check, but I don't stay on rules, because I believe that today full of so many great players, but what we miss is not technique, is not beautiful music, but is empathy. I think that too many fantastic, amazing players that I follow, that I listen to, but there's no empathy for me. I never get emotion. If I want to be emotion by players, I go till Michael Brecker and back. So in my playlist, you will find all the old guys, the old master, because they are fantastically technical playing. Talking. Can you imagine a young Sonny Rollins now playing, on stage with, I don't think that there will be so much different, between the modern players and Sonny Rollins. I think that it would be maybe scary for the modern players to have Sonny Rollins beside them, with that kind of sound. Is about attitude, is about that. And today, too many players for me, they play with open glass eye, even though they play fantastic here, but I miss this. I miss the stomach. Anyway, this is my way to leave the music. So getting back to how I choose my kit and my mouthpieces, and Gary's mouthpieces especially, because you can choose among so many different sensation. I go by physical response. Whatever I choose, I produce my own sound anyway. It's a matter of 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, the ligature, the right reed, whatever. But I will find myself eventually producing my own sound. So I choose by feeling, by physical response. So when I'm comfortable, and that is not easy, because I'm a particular player, I blow very hard. Gary knows something about that. I always have problems with, the step baffle or whatever kind of odd you find in the mouthpiece, because my air pressure is so strong that I need a moment to adjust myself. That's what didn't happen with Gary's mouthpieces. I'm able to play step baffle, rollover baffle, the new, how I forgot how he called them in the Metallica. Yeah. You've got those little steps, those little, I forgot the name.
Yeah. Yeah, the Metallica has a little steps in it, and walls cut out on the side to allow the sound to kind of like bounce right through the chamber. But whatever he touches, whatever he plays, is just wonderful. And I try to think of new ways to make new improvements, and I'm running out of ideas, I'll be honest with you. So because my next thing, if for anyone that's interested, yes, we make these Metallica from with filament that has powder and plastic fused together, and then it's made into a 3D printed mouthpieces. But I've made some other attempts recently that seem to be successful, and that is I've taken the STL files. Those are the files that you make 3D prints from. You can do them in a resin, you could do them in filament, and you could do them on a very expensive machinery. The 3D printers, they're very expensive. They're $250,000, $500,000 machines. They're used by Ford, General Motors, and I sent those out, the STL files, to be done. And I had a company reproduce a couple of the models, and they were very expensive. When I say expensive for me, they were over $900 each prototype, and they work. And it's just a 3D metal mouthpiece done in bronze, all bronze, that can be polished and plated and finished. And I have those pieces. And what I can tell you is they play really well. It's just that the bronze is very, very difficult to finish as far as the finishing, but I've got them gold plated, and I've got about a few pieces done that I think is really great, but it's still, for me, CNC pieces.
Okay, so Gary, let me just ask you, in terms of the Metallica mouthpieces, it's plastic with a metallic filament in there. People may have a question as to whether, is it safe to put in their mouth, all that kind of stuff. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So what I've been able to do with that material is I'm able to sand it, and I use 5 different grits to sand it to a smooth polish, and then I use a material to coat it, to protect it. It's the same material that they use to do pizza trays, like they make in Italy. And it's the trays that go in the oven, and they coat that with this material so it becomes safe. And yes, and that is recently, not in the last couple of months. So every piece is done up, and then has to be sanded and polished. I don't like sending it out unfinished. You see other companies doing 3D printed mouthpieces, not Metallica, and they send it right off the press, right off the 3D printer, and they send it to players sorry, to play, and it has what we call like an orange peel on the orange skin. So imagine an orange skin, and that's the 3D printed mouthpieces you've seen over the last year and a half. Recently, people are polishing them using acetone, and they put it in a bath, and they use acetone vapors to polish ABS. That's what most people use to print 3D mouthpieces. PLA, they use alcohol. They saturate that in a bath or in a tub, and the fumes will make it very smooth. I don't like doing that. I don't think it's safe. I don't think the same technique is used with ABS material. They put that in a tub or a tank, close it up. You'll see a bunch of videos about that, and then it's acetone vapors smooth the surface. That's not the way to finish a mouthpiece. The finishing of a mouthpiece is to sand it with different grits of paper, and then to coat it to protect it for, just for longevity and for durability. And so that's where I am with that as far as those mouthpieces go. But every piece I do now is all hand done, as if it was a CNC piece or a TAM piece, as if it was a metal piece, where it's all hand worked, hand done. And you can see, I don't know if you could see this, but this is a tray I'm working on this week. They're all going to be seen. These are Metallicas, by the way, and I will finish them. This is another tray. So this is, here you can see some copper, and you could see some steel, and the first one you saw was brass. And all of these take time, and I have to sit and actually physically sit there and clean them up, you might say, sand them down to get that smooth orange skin effect away. And I will not use acetone to polish. I can if I wanted to. I can use alcohol to polish mouthpieces. I don't do that. And I can assure you, again, I've taken quality control issues very seriously. And that's where I am with the mouthpieces right now.
No, thank you for answering that. And Stefano was talking before about when he's choosing his equipment, it's how it feels, right? Mm-hmm. And he was talking about he was talking about how he has like tremendous breath support, right? And so he's pushing a lot of air through the horns, through the mouthpiece. As a mouthpiece maker, like, of course you could deal with like tip opening size and all that kind of thing, reeds, whatever. But as a mouthpiece maker, like, what are you thinking about in terms of a player like Stefano who has tremendous breath support, and, what would be best for him?
Well, what I think about is when the air goes through the chamber, it just can't just go through. And particularly if you have a high baffle, and most players like that high baffle, because anything you ever read about mouthpieces, including the Rasher book on high tones, and you want to get bright sound, you need a baffle in there. Early days, they used to use a piece of putty and they glued it in, and that putty would break loose during a solo of a famous player. There's a video about Ernie Watts. I think you may know about that. But and when I decided to make mouthpieces with high baffle, I just didn't want the air to go in because it could back up. So what I did is I made what we call a bullet chamber in the mouthpiece. At the bottom of the base of the mouthpiece, you'll see like a little curve. It's just a little reservoir at the bottom. And now I started putting what we call on the sidewalls like a little feather on the left and right side. So the air has a place to go. It's a reservoir. It's a reserve for when the air, so it doesn't back up on a high baffle. When I think about Stefano, I just think, he likes, from what I've seen, he likes everything, of course. But he has chosen to have a Model 1, which has no baffle in it. So the air goes through just like you would like a Link. I think Links, if they had that little reservoir or bullet chamber, it would be a better Link. But Link never did that, okay? And Links were not made the way we make them today, or they were made during the Gardella era. Links were made with castings, where you took the left side and you took the right side, made it in two parts, you fused them together, silver soldered the two together, and that's like trying to put your two fingers and matching them perfectly. And that's why you didn't have a lot of great Links. You had a few Links, and Jerry had a few of those Links, and we took the best attributes of those Links, converted, like I said before, metric to G code. So a long story short is, I think of, he's pushing a lot of air I want to make that, you know, he's playing an 8-star, and I push it just a little bit, but I also make sure there's a little reservoir at the base or the bottom of the baffle inside the chamber. And also, because my CNC is what we call a compound radius, that means the lines are going this way and then they're crisscrossing. That's a compound radius that you can only do on a CNC machine. And those features make this mouthpiece, or my pieces, unique from everybody else. The other thing about my mouthpieces is under the bite plate, if you look at my CNC pieces, there's fine lines drawn. And inside the baffle, there are fine lines inside the baffle on a raised baffle, and also fine lines on a no baffle mouthpiece. Those lines allow the metal to breathe. So I described that early on in 1988, 89, as metal wants to breathe when you play it. It's sort of like concrete on a hot day wants to expand. You draw lines in that concrete so the concrete can expand. So when I think of what, you know, players generally want, is they want that metal to resonate. And it does resonate, it does expand. Sound will expand inside that chamber. And because it's copper absorbs sound, so it gives it that nice round, but not brittle, not nasal, not kazoo kind of sound. And that's what you have with brass mouthpieces, which brass mouthpieces made by other people, I regard as polluted metal. I don't use brass. I use virgin grain bar stock, pure copper, 100% pure copper. That's why I said the TAMs are 92, 94% copper, and then other metals. But those are done in a steel mold. Those are cast pieces, and that's a whole different process than CNC machining. So to me, the holy grail, you might want to say, is a CNC mouthpiece. And I'm so delighted, of course, that Stefano settled on one of my CNC pieces. But you know, when he plays a 3D piece, it's darn close to a metal mouthpiece and affordable to, you know, the everyday kind of player. And I would say it's a stepping stone. It's a entry level, sort of the TAM is an entry level to a CNC. So is a 3D mouthpiece, an entry level piece that I do, because they're copies of the best mouthpiece. Historically, these mouthpieces have a record. My Super Lead, my Super Classic, my KW, my Super Guns, they all have a track record, and you can look at it, and players who get them, they still have them. You don't see a lot of it being traded on the market in the aftermarket or used. You'll see a few, certainly. But I mean, I've sold over 27,000 handmade mouthpieces, mostly tenored. And I know that because we buy the bar stock, which is 4.5 inches, 1 inch wide. We buy that pre-cut, and I have the slips. And when I looked at it, this is going back a couple of months, it's over 27,000 pieces that we purchased over the years. That means I've made 27. Maybe some of them didn't come out so well, and maybe they were scrapped, but most of it was being used and most of it sold. And because they were copper, they have that unique sound to it. That, you know, the mini tracks in the baffle and under the bite plate, they have the pure copper body, and of course they have the blue bite plate. I recently had to make some pieces without the bite plate for a player in pure copper. I don't like doing it. It just, you have to change all the G codes. I can do it in a heartbeat on a 3D printer, but it's so difficult to do because the G code is in a computer. That computer runs Windows 98. I've never changed it.
Oh my God.
Okay. That has all my mouthpiece models in it for CNC machining, and it's dedicated to that. And I cannot change it because there's the back of that computer has a special hookup, you know, sort of like almost like a USB, but the old thing that you can picture, if you can picture it when you're hooked up to a printer, and it attaches to the back of the CNC machine. And maybe I can buy an adapter if I bought, but everything is there. I turn it on, Windows 98 comes up, it's slow, it's like molasses, it gets going. I call up the text file. The text files are the files that have the G codes in them, and we send it over, we transfer it over, what model it is, and then it starts to print. You know, it starts to cut, but that's, you know, the fixture that holds the parts is getting finicky. It's getting old. Like me, it's getting a little fussy about things. So. But yeah, so CNC is great, and there are guys today that are doing it. But I don't think that anybody's doing, the compound radius, the pure copper, the mini tracks, and all the other kind of thing. And then it's sitting at the bench and working them, making sure that mouthpiece has everything that I'm looking for in it. So there is a lot of handwork. It's a lot of hours on a piece, and the same with 3D. It's all comes down to handwork. I don't mind doing it as long as I don't get arthritis. I'm fine.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just thinking, if there's a listener out there that's listening to the fact that Gary uses Windows 98 and they're very tech savvy, you may get someone reaching out to you to help you to somehow upgrade that. I'm just putting it out there. But I want to get back to
Never going to happen.
I want to get back to Stefano for a second. So
I'm going to die before that machine dies on me.
That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
Stefano, which mouthpiece did you ultimately decide on, and what's your setup in terms of reeds? Are you using the ligature that Gary has provided, or something else? And also, like the horns that you're using, that kind of thing. What's your equipment setup?
Well, I choose the Super Guns 1 8-star because for me, copper was a great discovery. I didn't know how the copper sounded like before to have a Gary mouthpiece. I didn't know. And really, the copper sounds, for me, amazing. It's about frequencies. We don't do along with everything. And sometimes it's not just because the facing. It is material also, many things. And it depends on so many things. So my setup is Super Guns 1 with Selmer 404 ligature, classic. I use a 3-reed, different kind of reeds. Sometimes Labors, sometimes Superior, like the yellow box.
Oh, yeah.
That I love, by the way, because I played this since I was very young. Sometimes Rigotti, Wild. Yeah, it depends on how I feel. Lately, I'm playing with Alexander Reeds and Rigotti, Wild. So can you imagine? I'm a Borgany endorser. I play Borgany. Everybody knows that I'm playing Borgany saxophones. And since 5 years now, maybe almost 6. And after I found Gary's mouthpieces, I already had special springs because when I blow, I lift the keyboard somewhere in the saxophone. Yeah. So I had already special bigger spring to keep the pad down. Otherwise, but after Gary mouthpieces come, I had to make some other adjustment to the Borgany factory because I lift more. So because my saxo is vibrating more. And yeah, I made a funny video a few months ago, 2 months ago, where I used to play overtone G, for us is F on the piano, where I have a couple of ligature dancing while producing that frequency. Dancing, and you can see the screw getting off.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's on my Facebook and Instagram. I publish them. It's funny.
What did your twin brother say about that? Your twin brother.
My twin brother is envious.
That's hysterical. I gotta find.
Gotta let him solo a little more.
I gotta find that video. That's hysterical. So, all right. So we have your equipment. How did you develop such incredible breath support?
Nature.
Nature. Okay.
It is like technique. I never practiced technique in my life. I never practiced breath exercise in my life. absolutely natural. What I've been doing is playing. So playing along with Michael Brecker, I developed some technique because I wanted to reproduce what he did, but I never learned a whole solo of anyone. I stop on interesting moments or very difficult moments where I wanted to, hey, I want to do it me also. I want to do it too, you know. So doing, you know.
Okay, so now I'm curious though, what is your practice routine then? Like what's your practice routine now? And then when you were practicing like 10 to 14 hours a day, you know, what I'm sure some of that time, of course, was listening to things and then trying to figure it out and trying to figure out Brecker solos. But what was your practice routine then and now?
I'm not so sure you want to know that.
Okay, all right. Yes, I do now.
Because I do very particular things. I have American students, also some very young, nice guy, and I used to make them experiment what I do on myself. I experiment on myself. What I do, I always practice sound, you know. Then I do kind of gym for my fingers, you know.
Okay.
And then I do always, I don't practice harmony meant like usual harmony. I used to put tune over tune. I mean, a song over another song. I can practice 26-2 over body and soul, for example, and trying to give that sense. And I do it at 40 metronomo, you know,
Oh, 40
and
beats.
400 the same. Trying always to deal with sound, trying always to get interesting sound, and to do this for me the most funny part is really playing a tune over another tune that it doesn't match, you know, nothing. They have nothing to do together.
Can you
So
elaborate on that more? Because I'm trying to conceptualize this. So when you say playing a tune over another tune, you mean playing the tunes, like one tune's chord changes over another tune? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, even they don't fit as measures, bars, you know, even they don't fit. Yeah. Uh, I force myself to trying to give a sense on what I do. Maybe I read Moment's Notice, you know, progression over on the sunny side of the street or whatever else is, you know, random. I really, okay, I don't do this the whole day, of course,
Oh, yeah, sure.
but it's what I do often for 2 hours, 1 hour. It depends. I don't have a routine. When I come into my studio in the morning, when I don't do lessons, I just open a tune, whatever it is, and I can stay on it for 2, 3 hours, playing everything over it. Everything it comes into my mind, everything.
Wow. And the one thing though, the one thing that may be constant though is you're always working on your tone, your sound though. That probably is the one thing that is constant.
Yeah, absolutely. I do, but always playing. I don't do exercise. I get bored of exercise. So long tone, you know, is not meant for me. So I'd rather playing soft on the bottom of the register of the horn
Okay.
with really keeping my diaphragm constantly in tension, but to play phrases, you know, to always looking for some or melody or funny sound, whatever. And, you know, if you look, you find. I discovered this. I discover many particular sound that I can do uh, that I don't always do because they give a little anxiety, you know, when you do them. They are a little spooky, creepy. But yeah, with a saxophone, you can do, I think, whatever sound you want.
That's cool. You're letting the music And instead you're letting your music dictate your practicing. And you're also, I always say to a bunch of my students too, you could warm up on beautiful lyrical melodies, because that's a long tone too, if you're following phrasing and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Play, Dark That Dream, soft, and keep the note long enough and full bodied enough. It's not easy.
No, it's not. In fact, I also play trumpet too. And my trumpet teacher said to me, long time ago, he said, you know what the hardest note to play is? I said, no. He said a whole note, because you have to make that note beautiful for the entire length, So, I mean, that's why
I
people
agree.
play long tones, because, it's really hard to play a long tone and keep it beautiful. But, you also want to switch things up, and warm up with tunes and stuff like that. And it's interesting because you're in Italy, right? So melodic, that's the first word that came to my mind when you said that, right? Italy, beautiful melodies and stuff like that. So that makes absolute total sense. Now, let me ask you this question. Do you have, Stefano, do you have any upcoming, I'm going to ask you about upcoming projects, but actually what I did want to ask from before, the way you practice, like putting one tune's changes over another, how does that inform your own writing of your own music, if anything?
A lot, because when I write, I have a special way to write also. I don't go on the piano. I start always with bass lines,
Interesting.
usually. Yeah. Or maybe I start to record myself playing saxophone, and I can go for half an hour doing everything I'm able to do, slow, fast, screaming, just blowing soft. And then sometimes when I go listening back, I find places where I like to develop something, some ideas. But for me, it's important that they come, natural. If I start thinking to something I want to write, man, bye-bye. Then I spend years saying, no, I don't like this. I want to move this. No, I will move that. No, it's better if I go through A instead of B. And then, no, B is better than C. No, I go crazy. So I let instinct and, it's casual, decide something that I like, or bass lines, basically this is what I do for writing. And then I'm good in developing. If I have a good idea, then I'm very good developing, arranging, all by ear. I don't do it by conscience because I'm not so good as a arranger, as a composer. But I'm very good in developing and arranging. So once I have the idea, I'm able to write something, I guess, decent.
No, this is interesting too, because again, this goes back to the very beginning, when you spoke about how, you weren't long in school because you didn't like people telling you what to do. Rules are an issue, right? Instinct is your mojo, so to speak. Instinct is the name of your game. And you're also bringing that instinct to the way you write too. And not necessarily every day at 10 o'clock, you've got your, and a lot of people do this too. Everybody's got their own routine, but they have their journal out and they write every day, but for you, it's more a question of, it's going to come, organically. It's going to come to you just, I'm playing something, or I'm hearing a bass line, and okay, what can I do from that? Everything's instinct. That's the theme. That's your main theme. That's cool. That's really cool. So then, and I'm sure that, and I can relate this to Gary too, using his mouthpieces and stuff allows you to play organically, allows you to play by instinct. Because I know for me, and I'm sure for anyone else that plays any instrument, but particular saxophone, if the reed's not happening, if you're having a problem with your sound, if you're at the stage of your playing, like if you're an intermediate player and then you're getting better and better, and all of a sudden you're realizing, the mouthpiece isn't cutting, that's the thought that's in your head. That's the thought. Instead of being creative, you're like, I sound like crap. What do I do? I got to stop sounding like, and you're obsessed with that until you could find the answer. So can you relate to, that in terms of, Gary's mouthpieces and stuff, how that helps you?
Absolutely. They inspires me. When I have um, saxophone, mouthpiece, reed, ligature, whatever I feel I love to play with, I get inspired. I'm not joking. I swear about what I'm saying now. It might sound, propaganda, but it's not. Playing a piece instead of another piece, I change my way, my attitude, my way to play. Because for example, this Super Guns one inspires me to play completely free, completely as it comes. Because whatever sound I produce, I find myself in it. It's what I would like to hear, you know. Instead, sometimes different materials or different mouthpieces, they sound a little bit themselves for me. It's always me playing, but I don't feel so much inspired. You know what I mean? I don't know if this is easy to get. Maybe it's
No.
my cuckoo, but
No, no, no. I totally get you because if you're liking the way it feels and it feels efficient and you're liking the efficiency and you're also loving the way you sound, it frees your brain up. It frees your brain up to do what you want to do.
yeah, it's a physical response. When I want to go for something and that comes out, then inspires me to go more and to develop again because I can rely on what I want to do. It will come up, and this is you cannot do this with everything. At
Yeah, for
least for
sure.
me,
And
I'm very selective.
in terms of inspiration too, as well, two things. Like what you were putting out a lot of videos on Facebook during the pandemic. I wanted to just talk about that a little bit, but also, are there any upcoming projects happening for you? We're coming up close to October 2021.
Well, actually, if finger crossed, if everything goes as it should, I will go in studio for my new album beginning of November.
Great.
I cannot tell too much because I risk to be a liar because there are things still going on about the band, about many things. So, but yeah, this is the most important thing that I'm about to do because my last record I just have one record as leader. I've been sideman of beautiful project with Antonio Sanchez, of John Patitucci, Adam Nussbaum, John Riley, many guys. But do because I'm lazy, and also because I went through long sickness of my father. So I didn't write. I write when I feel it. Otherwise, I don't do. So there is people who is doing album every 3 months, 4 months. Uh, for me, that is not. I wish I could, but that's not for me. It doesn't come from me.
Yeah, and listen, you have to go with, with what you're feeling but the interesting thing though is like during the pandemic though, you were putting a lot of Facebook videos out, just playing what you felt. A lot of times you say, "Here's what I'm feeling today," and you'd play a song.
Well, if you want, I can tell you the story why I started in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Are you curious about it?
Yes.
Well, this is the truth. Because now I'm no longer ashamed of that. So, I'm not very popular as player in my country. Many people still, they don't know me in Italy because that kind of guy who doesn't recognize authority. I don't like to fight to have, even though I'm big, I don't like to fight to have a gig. I don't like injustice. I do say that unfair things, that you should do to your colleagues in order you go and they stay. No, I don't like everything about that. I don't like to leak people. I don't like to be kind, faking to be kind just to have job. So, you know, I in during my career, I didn't have so many gigs like other people had, you know. So before the first lockdown, the first, the beginning of the pandemic time, I came from a very tough winter with 4 gigs maybe in 6 months. So, money, they were a problem. And I was shy. I didn't want to publish any video on Facebook because my colleagues, they were posting every day, hey, look where I am. What a beautiful place. I'm playing here. I'm playing there. I have tour. I have this. I have that. And I had nothing. So I feel shame to post from my house. And they were posting from so many beautiful places.
Wow.
So, but then lockdown came for everybody. So everybody at home. So I said, okay, now everybody, we are at home, so I can start publishing some video. And, proposing myself to do online lessons because I had no money at all. So that's all started back for me. Everything started to work again. People started to know me. I spent also back from 2008 to 2012, almost 5 years in New York. I was playing with a lot of guys. I have quite a big experience, but in my country, still I'm not so well known, But yeah, lockdown helped me to make myself known and to start to do lesson online, which I love. I have many students from all over the world, from Japan to South America to New York to, name one. I have many. Yeah. So,
Were there more opportunities that came to you after putting up all those Facebook videos?
yeah, absolutely. From nothing to many.
That's
You
awesome.
know,
Yeah, because they didn't know me. Many.
can I say something? Donna and everyone that's listening, Stefano comes from a little village called Talamello. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. And that Talamello is going to be famous. It has to be famous because someone like Stefano came from that town. And people, to me, it's the same here. I'm in this little town here in East Providence, and local players, if I was in Connecticut or Boston, they'd probably come. And it's the same way, what you were saying earlier about, people, about gigs and whatnot, not really recognizing you. And it's hard to imagine, but you want to know something? And I'm going to predict this. They're going to make a movie about Talamello and Stefano Bedetti. I'm going to tell you that because it's a marvelous story. It's a marvelous. Imagine someone who never took a lesson in his life becoming a mega saxophonist and exciting people. It's like Bocelli. He came from a small town and people just love him because the world recognized him. And you don't have to speak Italian to feel what he feels. And you don't have to play saxophone to feel what Stefano feels. And that's what this is all about. That little town, I hope somebody like Ken Burns or somebody comes up with a bio and does a story about him because he's just a beautiful person. You can see it. You can see how he talks, how he feels, and everything he says has so much meaning. And it's going to happen. I mean, little Talamello got to become a big tourist center, at the very least.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad I was going to ask what part of Italy. The funny thing, okay, there's some connections here. I'm originally from New York, so when you said the Bronx, my father's from the Bronx, so I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I heard it in your voice for sure as soon as you said that. But also I'm half Italian, so Naples and Sicily. So that's, that's where my family is from. So, yeah, so we all have some connections here for sure, which is really cool. But let me ask you, Stefano, what is your favorite, if any, what's your favorite genre of music to play?
What's my favorite?
What's your favorite style of music or genre of music to play?
Genre. Um, well, it's not easy to answer, but I sleep at night with Bach. That's for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I usually do. No, when I have a girlfriend, no, of course. But when I'm single, I fall asleep with Bach. 12 hours of Bach. And sometimes I wake up at night, maybe like this. It depends on what is playing, and or maybe I wake up and I see stuff. I'm complicated, but anyway, yeah, Bach. I love Bach. I love classical music, all music that can really give 100% expression to what music is for me. And of course, I in my playlist there's my favorite Nat King Cole. I go crazy about Nat King Cole. Nat King Cole makes me dream every time. Nat King Cole singing, playing piano also, but Nat King Cole singing. I don't know if you see Goosebumps. I just have to talk about him. Goosebumps, because it's something that I'm really connected to. And of course, all the old guys. Name one. They drive me crazy.
We talked a bit about Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra, Errol Garner.
Yeah.
All those guys.
So it's just not saxophone players that influence you. It's listening to the greats, just for phrasing, people like Frank Sinatra and so many great singers.
Yeah, for
I love
sure.
singers. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love singers.
my trumpet teacher would say to me, listen to singers all the time. And I thought that was crazy. I was young in college and stuff like that. I was like, why? Why would I want to do that? I want to hear trumpet players. But no, I get it. Totally get it, for sure. And there's such a rich musical history in Italy, that you could draw upon, especially when it comes to singers, for sure, for sure. So we're going to wrap this up in a second. So I'm so glad that you guys found each other, and that the reason why I had you both on was because of how, you guys have this partnership and stuff. And, Gary's mouthpieces really resonate, no pun intended, actually pun is intended, really resonate with you, Stefano. And they help you to, feel free to express yourself. You guys mentioned briefly that you're coming up with Stefano's own brand, so to speak, of mouthpieces. Is that what you said before, Gary?
No, about in the middle of the pandemic, I made a Stefano Bedetti 3D printed mouthpiece, and he played that and a couple of tunes, and I was just amazed. But the reason I did it is he said he loved orange, so I made an orange Stefano Bedetti model especially for him, and he recorded it. Hope he does another video with it using it. I would love to hear it.
I will.
Thank you. What I am going to do is I'm going to take that piece and take that STL file. It just came to me this minute, and make it into what we call Ascend. That's the model that I take STL and do the bronze on those expensive third-party 3D printers. They're very expensive, and turn it into a bronze metal. Have a couple of pieces. It'll take a couple of weeks, but I just thought of it. Why not? And it'll be a metal piece, and you can try that one out. That would be amazing.
That would be crazy. I don't feel like to ask something more.
You ask, man. You ask. Your dream is my command. I'm the Houdini guy. You just say it. I'm gonna pop out of that bottle, and I'll make whatever. Because you have been so kind to me and to my wife. God bless you for this. I don't want to cry.
Same here. You know what? So now that you mentioned this, I want to say that from the Yeti, I told him the Yeti was fantastic. And I told him I would like a Yeti with some difference. And he perfectly read what I wanted to have. So the reason why I'm not playing this now, Gary, I'm saying this to you now.
That's all right. No, listen.
You are the Udini. So is because material. Sometimes I blow so hard that I feel it moving, kind of moving, But this thing, he perfectly did what I really want as facing, opening tip, facing, response. This thing is amazing.
Yeti.
No, this is the Stefano Bedetti.
Okay.
The
You got
ASR. This is
make it
by
in
the
metal.
way,
Make it in metal on Ascend.
please.
Ascend is going to be the mouthpiece down the line a couple of weeks from now. I'll get on it right away.
By the way, this is going to be very collectible because
Yes.
he was the first one. I don't know if you can see it, but he wrote Bedetti with just one T.
Ooh.
So, yeah, Stefano Bedetti. So this is very collectible. I will sell it when I'm dead.
Don't sell it.
Wow.
Sell it after I'm gone.
Okay, now we can all say great things come from this podcast. So now a new mouthpiece model is coming from this, and I can bet you that there are going to be other people that are going to be interested, Gary, in getting this mouthpiece model. So just be prepared.
So what I'll do is, of course, it's 3D printed, and I'll make the Stefano Bedetti still available with the way it's spelled. I'm sorry, but it'll be collectible. And then the new one will be the Ascend, ASCEND. That means ascend to another level in 3D metal, bronze, gold plated, 18 karat gold plated. I will work on that for you, Stefano. I promise.
Man, can't wait to see
My brother.
Final result.
This is awesome. Oh my gosh. You know what? This is a great way to end. Listen, guys, thank you so much for taking the time. I know, Stefano, this was very hard for you because you had to fit me in between like shows and stuff like that. And Gary, again, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, Donna. You are a jewel. God bless you, because you do so much for this saxophone industry and for young players, and they need to listen to you. And they need to learn from you. And, you are so kind, and it's hard.
Great.
Yeah, she is a sweetheart. I
Great
can't find the words to thank you for what you've done and how you helped and all the nice things you've said over the past year. And you've given me an opportunity to, show what I do. I love what I do. For me at this stage of the game, it's not about money anymore. I mean, I'm fine. Everything is good, and I just love doing what I do. I love coming in every day and making some mouthpieces, selling some instruments, making some more mouthpieces, sitting at the bench, my day is so complete. I'm here Sundays, and as you practice 10, 12 hours a day, I am up at 4 o'clock, just the same way.
I can tell it's true.
How many times have we called each other at 4 a.m. in the pandemic? I mean, and I'm doing so many things. And it's hard because I used to have a lot of people here, but now because of pandemic, I don't want anyone still in here yet. We have grandchildren, and we're very afraid. My wife is, and my daughter especially. She's a doctor, and she understands all of this stuff about the passing of droplets and everything. But in any case, it's absolutely fantastic what you're doing. And for Stefano, I know he has some other projects, teaching projects as well, if I'm not mistaken, that he's working on. And his recordings are inspirational. Please, God, keep doing them. And keep sharing them, and keep sending them to me. I'm building a small library.